Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, what have I got for you today? So this is a suggestion that I've had from you guys to paint some old ruins within a lovely garden situation. So we're going to be having a go at this lovely little English garden scene. But it's also a lesson in experimenting with and exaggerating our greens to get more contrast and more variation to make our paintings a little bit more exciting. But before we do that, I just want to quickly announce the winner of last week's Leave a Comment competition, in which we're giving away this lovely parrot from last week's tutorial. So we had an official come down from the Lottery and Competitions Commission to adjudicate. Okay, it was just Margot. So here we go. Fingers crossed, everyone. And the comment selected is Sabine Depa. Hope that's how you pronounce it. So, Sabine, if you would like to email me, link below in the description, with your full address, we'll get this shipped off to you. So let's get started with the tutorial, shall we? So here is the reference photo, and it's an old picture of mine of Great Compt Garden near Sevenoaks in Kent. Now, as you can see, the greens are all fairly similar, so today's exercise is exaggerating our greens by mixing lots of experimental colours. Okay, so for today's materials, my paper is some Arches cold press, 140 pounds. It's in a block, so it won't need stretching. Now, my paints today, I'm using mainly some Daniel Smith's. There's too many colours to list here, but I will put them down below on the video as it goes through. Just 3 brushes from my range, a number 6 and number 12 round and a 3/4 inch flat, and I'm going to be working in a square format today, which is just something I like to do from time to time. So it's quite a complicated line drawing, so if you want the template, it's free to download from my website, link in the description below. So I'm going to start by painting the flowers first with my number 6 brush, just simple blobby shapes, and please feel free to use any colours you want. Now I'm painting them first because I want to make sure they go down onto white paper to get the colour as bright as possible. Oops, a splodge on my wrist here. Never mind, we'll turn that into something later. Now, the variety of flowers you paint is really up to you. Now, being a qualified botanist myself, I've gone for the native red flower, purple flower, and the prolific pink flower. Off we go! And I'm wetting the area above the ruin as I want a really soft, sort of out of focus background. And I'm thinking of making this a semi-vignette style painting, leaving the top right and bottom left unpainted. It just helps to give a nice arty feel to your picture. And a big flat brush is ideal for going around these shapes. Next, I'm literally chucking in the paint wet in wet and letting the colours merge. Now, there are far too many mixes to list them all, but I have listed below all the colours I'm using, and always letting them blend on the paper. I'm also trying to get a very dark value around the top of the arch to create a good strong contrast. Splatting in colour is always a good way of quickly getting more pigment onto your washes. Next, now make sure your flowers are totally dry. Now what I'm doing here is masking them out by painting the masking fluid directly on top of the flowers. Now you may think that this is an odd way of going about it, but if I'd masked out the flower shapes first, they wouldn't have had the natural shape you get with paint on a brush. Now when masking out the flowers at this stage, you don't need to be super accurate, as little white edges can add a real sparkle, and all will be revealed when we take it off later. Now, important, I've never had an issue with tearing paper or the paint lifting off when the masking fluid has been removed, but test it out first. I'd hate for you to spend hours on this lovely painting only to be ruined at the end. Okay, now for some fun. Nice wet washes for all these bushes. Now, as before, there are far too many colour mixes to list every one. And as you can see, I'm just going for it and mixing the colours freely on my palette. But always make sure you get the darker value towards the bottom of each bush. Here, the sharpened wooden end of my brush to score out some details of the bush below. Here I'm painting this bush in much the same way, mixing those colours on the paper. Scoring into the paper again with the end of my brush and creating contrast on the top of the pillar here. So next I'm warming up the greens by adding in some Aussie red gold, but you can use any orangey colour into your mix. Just nice, quick and loose, letting the paint do its thing without fiddling. Okay, a short moment for a little pep talk. Now, I get loads of comments here on YouTube and at my weekly classes about the frustration of painting too tightly and detailed. Now, the first thing to say is there's nothing wrong with painting in a more controlled, detailed way. This painting, for instance, took me nearly a week to complete. But for me, the style I enjoy the most are the paintings like this one done in less than 3 hours. It's painting the suggestion of detail without painting detail. So how do I get over that fear factor? That looks scary is something I hear a lot. But you have to be brave and go through the process and not be afraid of making mistakes. Now, I know I say this a lot on this channel, but a failed painting is not a failed painting, it's simply a learning process. And you'll never gain experience without trying. It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Painting in a loose style isn't easy and it takes practice. So if you're having a go at this one, try and paint it in under 3 hours. Relax, play some gentle music, have fun, and never put pressure on yourself to paint a masterpiece every time. Anyway, shall we move on? Again here, I just love scoring out fine detail with the end of my brush, but always done when the paint is still wet. Okay, for the next set of bushes, I've added a lot more blue to really exaggerate and vary the green, to give a contrast to the bush below. And I'm using all the same techniques as previous. So I'm using French ultramarine as my blue for mixing in today's tutorial, rather than my usual cobalt blue, as it's one of the best blues for granulating, and that's the sort of texture I'm looking for in today's painting. Here I'm just adding some cerulean blue to get a real turquoisey feel. Okay, so now we need to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break, and as it's an English country garden, how about a nice cup of Earl Grey with a cucumber sandwich? Okay, so now for the ruins, and I'm putting down a base watery wash of yellow ochre all over the stonework. While I'm waiting for that to dry, just splattering in a touch of foliage texture. So here I've decided I want to increase the contrast between the background and the arch. So I'm just putting in a little wash of Payne's Grey and softening it out at the edges. And this spiky bush here, just using all the same techniques, and this one is a much more yellowy green. Next, back to the stonework, and for some shadowy details using a little watery burnt umber. I'm also dragging my brush across the surface of the paper to get this lovely dry brush texture. Watery Payne's Grey here for some shadow details to this decorative thingy. Looks a bit like a mushroom. Back to the stonework, and a much stronger mix now for these dark details. And I'm still using my number 12 brush. Here I'm just adding in a touch more French ultramarine to sort of grey up the colour a little, and a touch of splattering in the path here. Okay, so now with my number 6 brush for some little details, using the same colour but a more concentrated mix. It's much creamier. Now with some watery green for a few leafy details. Now it's so easy to overwork this section, so just a few little touches here and there. Here using a damp tissue to soften and blend a few of these hard edges. Then make sure everything is really dry and remove the masking fluid. So now I can go back on top and add a little more colour into the flowers and even add a few extra ones into the background. Yes, irises, that's what these could be. Here with a touch of white gouache to add a little sparkle here and there. for this bush here, I really want to bring it in front of that spiky plant. So I'm simply using a soft pastel, and as you can see, it creates a lovely textured foliage effect. There we go, all done in just under 3 hours. So I just wanted to show you the original photo again, and as you can see, I've really exaggerated those greens to give more variation and interest. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. It's a really good opportunity to experiment with your paints, mixing your colours, especially getting all those different greens, warm greens and cool greens and everything in between. So I'll look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment. I do read every single one, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week. So take care. Lost my cup of tea, it's over there.